Far Cry 6. Yesterday, we got our first proper look at what the next installment in the Far Cry series will look like, and it's safe to say it seems that they're definitely cranking the craziness and production quality up a few levels. Think renowned actors, screenwriters, the possible return of Vaz from Far Cry 3, and most importantly, dogs on wheels. More on that later. But in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at all of the information released about the game so far, some in-game screenshots, and what to expect from the gameplay in Far Cry 6. A big thanks to Ubisoft for sponsoring this one, and if you want to know more about the game, there's a link down in the description below. So having a big actor take center stage in a video game is not something new, but when I saw that Giancarlo Esposito was going to have a major role in the new Far Cry game, you could absolutely understand how he would be the perfect fit for the game's villain. Esposito has had big roles in Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, and The Mandalorian, and that gritty bad guy just seems to suit him. In Far Cry 5, the game's main antagonist was Joseph Seed, and he essentially wanted to see the world burn, and you were sent in to stop that from happening. I don't think he was quite as memorable as someone like Pagan Min from Far Cry 4 or Vaz from Far Cry 3, and the Vaz comparison could actually be really important. As for the setting of the game, well, Far Cry 6 is set on an island called Yara, whose leader is Anton Castillo, played by Esposito, and he rules with an iron fist. You, on the other hand, play as Danny Rojas, a native who joins up with a guerrilla faction to overthrow the president's control, and you can choose to play as male or female. While the setting is fictional, it very much has a Cuban feel and aesthetic to it. You can definitely see where they drew inspiration from. There's also one more character that's been revealed, and as it turns out, it could be the most important one in terms of the overall story, and that is Anton's son, Diego. So far, we've seen an incredibly well done stylized title sequence for the game with an absolutely banging soundtrack, and then another cinematic trailer where Anton Castillo is trying to teach his son Diego a lesson. Far Cry games haven't tended to have children in them before though, but in the case of Far Cry 6, there seems to be a very big focus on the character of Anton and his relationship with his son Diego, even to the point where Diego is right there on the cover art, and seemingly Anton wants to mold his son to take over his reign when the time is right. In fact, there will be a dynamic story in the gameplay between all three characters, and this time you'll even get a voice. You'll get to see your own character. In previous Far Cry games, even the last one, the main antagonist tended to be this overall bad guy who appeared at the start, disappeared for the middle, and then you had to do things and they'd pop up every now and again just to remind you that they were still there. But this time, you, the character, like I said, you'll see yourself, and it seems that you will interact with the two other main characters here quite a lot. The narrative director on this project, Naveed Kavari, has said that the team wanted to ensure that you got a good amount of face time with Anton to be able to see things from his perspective, and as such there will be an ongoing dynamic between these three characters. Your character Danny, as I mentioned, can be either male or female, and this time around you will speak. In Far Cry 5 you could choose to play as either male or female, but you were simply known as the deputy and you didn't speak. So I think it's good to see more of a character this time around, and so it will be interesting to see how that changes the dynamic of the story. One of the more interesting things though, I think, with this game is Diego. There are a lot of theories floating around the internet right now with some evidence to back them up that Diego is in fact Vaz when he was younger from Far Cry 3. The idea is that Far Cry 6 is actually a prequel to Far Cry 3, and the actions of the game will turn Diego into the person we met as Vaz, and I wanted to touch on this and why it could be interesting if it was correct, and also look at the evidence for both sides. Right now, we don't have an actual time setting for Far Cry 6, just some screenshots, the cinematic trailer, and the idea that it's a modern setting. What exactly covers modern though? Well, that's the question. Ubisoft, maybe they're being intentionally vague here to stop people connecting the dots. Now, one of the main reasons that people have come up with the Vaz conclusion though is the scar. If you look at the cover art for the game, you can see a clear scar over the right eye of Diego, and some people have said that Vaz has that same scar. I do have to say, it seems odd that Diego would have a very similar scar to the one that Vaz has, but it does become more believable though when you take into consideration a comment that Michael Mando, the guy that plays Vaz, made himself on Reddit a few months ago, and he replied to a comment on Vaz saying the following: Thank you so much. Vaz is my spirit animal. Having co-created that character is something that will always be dear to me. I still get recognized as Vaz, and I still feel that outpouring of love for the character. It makes me very happy. Who knows, maybe I will reprise the role very soon. And then he does a little sticky out tongue. Teasing. Again, that doesn't prove anything, but he does kind of look like him, doesn't he? It would be a what if Diego is in fact Vaz, and the actions of the game lead to him being shaped into the person we know that he turned into. Perhaps at the end of the game, we might jump forward in time and Michael Mando will be making an appearance as an adult Vaz once again. Based on some other evidence though, not everything lines up. For starters, Vaz has a canon backstory already, which completely goes against this theory. He was supposedly born on the Rook Islands in 1985 and was a member of the Rakyat. Not only that, but Far Cry 3 is set in 2012 and Vaz is an adult there, yet in the cinematic trailer for Far Cry 6, we can clearly see a modern cell phone on the table. And at this point, Diego is still a child, so that simply doesn't make sense in terms of the timeline. And while I think the idea of having a prequel would be great, and I guess we can't rule it out, especially if Ubisoft have thought of something clever here, but the modern tech in the trailer seems to put a stop to any of the Vaz theories, for me at least, unless there's a time machine involved, but okay, let's not go there. Maybe Vaz will just turn up as an older character. The setting does seem very similar to Far Cry 3 based on the screenshots. And what about the island of Yara then? What can we expect? Well, Montana from Far Cry 5 was gorgeous, but Yara is aiming to not only give you that classic Far Cry feel when it comes to the vistas and environments, but also add new ones into the mix. In Yara, you're going to find tropical beaches, jungles, but also the island's main sprawling city, something new for Far Cry. Of course, Far Cry wouldn't be Far Cry without some kind of jungle environment, but the idea that there'll be a big city for the first time is really interesting to me, not least for the factor of verticality and parkour. I mentioned earlier that Yara is heavily inspired by Cuba, but what we don't know is exactly what year it's set in. The island of Yara, it seems, is almost frozen in time, but Ubisoft's goal, they say, is to make a living postcard with some vintage thrown in, and it's implied that Yara has been shut off from the rest of the world for some time. So when it comes to the weapons and vehicles, you're definitely going to get some unique stuff here. During your time in the game, you'll get interesting weapons that have been cobbled together from whatever you can muster. You're part of the guerrillas and you're fighting against an army that has tanks, military vehicles, and modern weapons. But the stuff you'll be using will be heavily modified and recycled. Guns with custom scopes, rifles that you've stuck together with glue and maybe used parts of cars and exhausts. The game is going to have some really unique weapons and I'm all for that. One of them even looks like a nail gun in the screenshots. The cars there look to be maybe lots of 80s American convertibles, and there's a horse. I presume you can ride that too, get around the level. Planes as well in the sky. It looks like they'll be making a comeback. There is one other animal though that I promised we'd talk about. Chorizo. And this, I suppose, is a continuation of the Fangs for Hire system that's been in a couple of the Far Cry games now. Chorizo in Far Cry 6 is a sausage dog with wheels. Of course he is. Chorizo's obviously had some sort of sad accident and therefore he's been equipped with some wheels to keep him moving. And in the box there, it looks like there's a couple of scopes and magazines, so maybe that's how he will help you during combat, delivering supplies. Cute and lethal. I like the combination. And you know, we'll remember Cheeseburger the bear from Far Cry 5, how could we not? But Chorizo will be one of the new buddies that you can take into battle with you, and I assume there'll also be human companions too, like there was in Far Cry 5. Sadly, we didn't get to see any real gameplay, just the gameplay screenshots, but hopefully we will see more later in the year. Apparently Ubisoft are planning to do more of those forward events in the future. And as of right now, Far Cry 6 is set to release on February 18th next year. It's been in the works for 4 years, they say, and it's coming out on PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and Google Stadia. That's a lot of platforms. Let's just hope they get it right. With that said, that's all for today, folks. Do let me know your thoughts on Far Cry 6 down in the comments below. I have to say that I'm enjoying the vibe of the game. If that's a thing that you can enjoy, the production quality definitely seems to have increased, and the fact that they've got these big actors in, that TV style intro, the soundtrack, it's just a cool setting. And those screenshots, they look pretty next gen to me. Can't wait to see some real gameplay though. Maybe I'll get hands on soon. I hope so. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you didn't, a dislike. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you in the next one.